Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Don't turn it off.
Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review of The Terminator. Can't believe it's taken this long, quite frankly, for me to get to this movie. This film has been pretty much a mainstay in my movie watching life since about the age of 8. It appeared on television when I was about 8 years old, and my brother taped it off TV. He had some prior knowledge about it. He was excited about it. I'd never heard of it. And we watched it, you know, we all sat there as a family, and I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. And for anyone who doesn't know, which would just be quite bizarre, the story follows, obviously, this character of Sarah Connor, whose son in the future, he's not been born yet, will lead a resistance against machines that have taken over the planet, basically. They've become sentient, they've become intelligent, and they're basically trying to wipe mankind out. Anyway, the machines send a Terminator, a robot, cyborg, back in time to kill Sarah Connor so that her child is never born, squashing the resistance, basically. And humanity send their own protector back in time, a man called Kyle Reese, to basically, protect Sarah Connor. And then the film essentially plays out like a very high concept slasher horror. You know, science fiction predominantly, but it's also definitely got the flavour of something like Halloween, in which you have a seemingly unstoppable killer constantly pursuing this one woman. It's a very simplistic B-movie concept, but it's elevated exponentially by the direction from Cameron and his script as well, it must be said. His script is absolute dynamite. Now, he was coming into this is essentially his first film, but it also kind of isn't. He was coming into this on the back of Piranha 2, The Spawning, a film for which he was hired for as director and did a couple of weeks on, because the producer that he was working with was a bit of a douche. He had a deal with the studio at the time to make films abroad, providing that he would hire American directors. But when he hired those American directors, he would fire them pretty shortly after so that he could pretty much take over the job. Cameron was one of these guys. But yeah, that's a whole different story. The story behind that is pretty entertaining, to be honest, if you go into it. But it was an experience that really tainted Cameron, and he went away and he had nightmares, really. One of them being this machine rising out of the fire, which obviously would later become the Terminator. It became the germ for his idea that would ultimately become the Terminator. And thankfully he did go through that experience in order to have this, because yeah, it's a great film. It's an absolute classic. Like I said, I've loved this ever since I was a young boy. I must have seen this, goodness knows how many times, between the ages of 8 to 10. And yeah, it was, from about the age of 10 to 15, it would pretty much appear in my top 10 list for, all the time. And even now, you know, if you ask me to do like a top 50 movies of all time, this is definitely going in there. It just had such an impact on me. Sarah Connor as a character, obviously we get a bit more into who she is as a person in the second film. We will get to that. But just, she's brilliantly written and she's brilliantly played by Linda Hamilton, who has to go very quickly, I think, from showing us this tender, carefree kind of, you know, life in front of a kind of character, almost like a girl next door character, to a very strong, independent, future mother of a soldier, of someone who's going to train this kid, and have that kind of strength. And she pulls it off without ever losing her feminine qualities, without ever, she never becomes like a man woman. She keeps that femininity and yet is still believable as this mother of the future's saviour, so to speak. Just subtle moments, but particularly when we see her final moment with the Terminator, when she clicks that button and delivers a particular line of dialogue, which I won't say here. You believe it. You believe that she is hard as nails at that point. You believe the intent. You believe that she has changed, that she is not the person she once was. Which again, going into Terminator 2, you need that in order to see who she's become in Terminator 2. So yeah, great performance there from Hamilton. Obviously coupled with Cameron's direction. Kyle Reese as well, Michael Biehn. So my friend Graham, who has the channel Man v Film, we've actually done an in-depth review of this for Brits on Flicks. But he always, when we bring up Michael Biehn, he always says something along the lines of the actor who should be much bigger than he was. And it's true. When you look at the work he did with Cameron, this most notably, and Aliens, he should have been a bigger star. It's got to be said. But he's very good as that kind of military guy. The soldier type, very kind of rugged, very worn, very weathered, but with a certain sense of like wisdom about him. Just a grounded kind of wisdom. He uses that here. He gets a lot of expositional dialogue here, to be honest. A very tricky character to work with because most of what he's saying throughout this film is exposition. But because of, again, the way Cameron directs it, the way he's written it, like a lot of the exposition he first delivers to Sarah Connor, it's really interspersed with these action sequences. And it takes place within an action sequence. So they're kind of hiding from the Terminator, they're on the run, and he keeps on delivering these moments of exposition that feel more than exposition. They really do build a great picture of the world from which he came, the world in which he lives, and that in turn builds a sense of this character, of who he is, of what he's had to struggle with, like I say, the world he's existed in, things that we just don't have to deal with, that are part of his everyday life. And it feeds into who he is as a person. So we get a really great picture of who this guy is just through this exposition that he delivers. But it's not exposition about him as a person. He's not unloading his emotional state and his personal history. He's just telling Sarah about his world. And because of that world, because of that picture we get of his world, we in turn get a real sense of who he is as a person. It's great. It's brilliantly written. It's exposition in the best sense, Many times in films, exposition just kills it. It just takes me right out. But it's all part of the character. And it's needed, in this situation, when you've got this guy from the future and this woman, he can't show her, he has to tell her. So again, it's brilliantly written, it's brilliantly handled. And of course, the Terminator himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, perfectly cast, and quite underrated, I think, as a physical actor for what he brings here. It'd be very easy to just write him off and say, oh yeah, he's just a big lug who doesn't have to emote that much. But it's actually quite hard, I think, to do a lot of what he does. The particular movements in his body, and he does it perfectly. So yeah, Schwarzenegger is great in this. It is a perfect role for him. He was just instantly iconic in this role, which, believe it or not, originally was intended for Lance Henriksen. So when this film was being put together, Lance Henriksen was cast as the Terminator. Cameron even, he did a lot of his artwork around the Terminator. And then when it was suggested to him that Schwarzenegger be used, or when he saw Schwarzenegger in Conan, I think it was the director of Conan suggested it to him. And after that, that's all Cameron could see. And yeah, he took a meeting with him and then realised that the two of them were very much on the same page. And unfortunately for Henriksen, he had to let that part go. But Cameron threw him a bone. You know, he still gave him a part in this, a really good, amusing part, actually. Just a bit part as a cop, but he does a lot with it, injects a lot of character into this guy that he has to play. It's quite nice to see him. And obviously later, he'd get to play a cyborg, an android, so to speak, with Bishop in Aliens. So, it would eventually come around. But yeah, I love Henriksen, but let's face it, Schwarzenegger is Terminator, so the right decision was made there. Really great use of a low budget. It was not a big budget at all. It's very much an independently spirited film. A lot of the time they were shooting without permits. A lot of scenes where they shoot on the road and cops would be coming down the road and they'd quickly have to speed up, hide the cameras, get moving. So yeah, it definitely has that kind of independent spirit about it, and all the better for it, I think. I think oftentimes when you're limited with resources, it is the mother of invention, and certainly with this film that was definitely the case. There's a lot of effects work here where they've had to get around things, they've had to get around their budgetary constraints, and it just pays off. There's some stuff here that really still does hold up. There's a few times when the special effects don't quite work, it doesn't quite kind of mesh with things. You look at the stuff towards the end with the T-800, close-ups on the feet, moving very slowly, and there's not much distance between the feet as it's moving, and then you cut to a wide shot that's more animated, where the T-800's kind of speeding towards them, and you just think, yeah, those shots don't really match up. But it doesn't matter, because the design work on the T-800, Stan Winston's work of bringing that to life, is just incredible. It's absolutely brilliant. It's still one of the most iconic images. And you think about that, that nightmare that Cameron had of the machine rising out of the fire. He puts that image into the film at the end, and it really is a nightmarish image because of everything that Connor and Reese have been through. And, they've blown this thing up in a truck. And yet, even after all that, it rises from the flames. And it's just this, I remember seeing that as a kid and it just blew my mind. I was just like, that is insane. Michael Myers being unstoppable and all that, it's nothing compared to the T-800. That is one scary ass robot. So yeah, really great action sequences as well. Again, given the low budget, particularly the future scenes, when they go to the future and you see all the hunter killers going round and the T-800s. You don't really see many T-800s actually. Well, you don't see any T-800s on the battlefield in this one. You see that more later in the sequel. But just the hunter killers going round, the big flying things and stuff. That again, that design work would be carried over into Aliens. What Cameron did with Aliens. It's brilliant. Really great design, really creative. The effects work is fantastic. Practical effects as well, which again, I still think hold up a lot better than CGI does. I take practical any day of the week over CGI. And then ultimately you've got this story which taps into the fears of technology, of advancement. I think often technology is advancing around us faster than we can keep up with, and that carries with it a lot of fear about where we're heading. And this film really does tap into that, and it also taps into the idea of fate versus free will. Are we, how much are we in control of our own destiny? Is it destiny or is it fate? You got this woman who's been told what her future is going to be already, or certainly what her son's future is going to be already, before he's even born. How much control does she have on that? Does she have to stick to the same path? Can she change that fate? And these are all themes that will be picked up on in much greater depth, I feel, in the sequel. But yeah, it does raise a lot of those questions, deals with a lot of those themes, and does it brilliantly in the most entertaining way possible. So like I say, Terminator, absolute classic for me, still one of my favourite films of all time. Very, had quite an impression on me at a young age. and I have no choice but to give it a 5 out of 5. Absolutely, unequivocally, yeah. It's. I watch it today, and funnily enough, I went to see a double bill at the cinema just recently, and watching them on the big screen, I felt I had to review them. The job they did, just the digital transfer for the cinema, was just spectacular. The sound, hearing the audio in surround sound, was just it was just a pleasure, absolute pleasure going to see this on the big screen. I'd never seen either of the first two movies on the big screen, and I saw them in a double bill, hence my reviews. And yeah, it was incredible. I do find that there's a bit of a lull now in the middle section of the film at some points, and it's just because I've seen it so many times. Seriously, I must have seen this movie at least 50 times. It's yeah, I just watched it constantly as a kid, and I've seen it a lot as an adult as well. Yeah, like I say, despite that lull, there's a bit of moments that's a bit drag for me. It's only because I've seen them so often that I know what's coming. Yeah, I cannot give this any less than a 5. So there you go. Terminator, absolute classic. But what do you think? Have you seen it? If not, flipping it, get on that right now. But yeah, leave your comments down below as to your thoughts on this film. If you don't rate it that highly, don't bother commenting, because I'm not going to listen. No, I'm just joking. It's all subjective, I get it. But yeah, for me, it's a classic. Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.